Saab's Gripen fighter jet is now heading home, with the Fed still weighing whether to pull out of a planned purchase of dozens of American-made F-35s. The U.S. ambassador to Canada has been vocal about his support for the F-35.
Swedish defense firm Saab wants Canada to buy and build its fighter jets. The firm is pitching a partnership with Bombardier and promising to create up to 10,000 jobs.
Multi-billion-dollar purchase of American F-35 fighter jets. Now, the leading candidate as possible replacement would be the Swedish Gripen.
Some shifts in military power do not announce themselves with speeches or missile tests. They happen quietly behind factory doors where engineers make choices that ripple far beyond the room. One of those moments began inside a British company better known for luxury cars and passenger jets than frontline fighters. Rolls-Royce made a move that slipped under the radar at first, yet it ended up shaking assumptions inside NATO. The ripple landed on the Saab Gripen, a jet long treated as a practical option rather than a headline grabber. While attention stayed locked on giants like the F-35 and the Eurofighter, something inside the Gripen changed, and the numbers began telling a different story. Analysts noticed, strategists paused. A fighter once dismissed as an underdog started appearing in conversations about future air combat and alliance planning. Why did this upgrade hit NATO planners so hard? What changed inside the Gripen, and how did a single engineering decision rewrite expectations about modern air power? Let's break it down. Rolls-Royce did far more than refine a component, and the importance of that shift only comes into focus after understanding why the Gripen was created in the first place. This aircraft was never meant to impress crowds at air shows or function as a diplomatic trophy. It was built for conflict as it actually unfolds, in places where runways are short, weather is hostile, and support is thin. While the F-35 pushes past $100 million per airframe and depends on dense logistics networks, and while the Eurofighter demands heavy infrastructure and large maintenance teams, the Gripen followed a different logic from day one. It was engineered to operate from highways and rough strips, to function in Arctic cold, to be serviced quickly by small crews, and to get back into the air repeatedly with minimal downtime. Every design choice favored speed of response, data-driven combat, and survival when conditions collapse. Yet for years, the same criticism followed it everywhere. The aircraft was seen as efficient and clever, but lacking muscle. That assumption shaped procurement debates across NATO and kept the Gripen out of serious competition with heavier fighters. That belief unraveled quietly when Rolls-Royce became deeply involved, long before most of the alliance realized what was happening. As the Gripen E program moved into its later stages, a low-profile partnership took shape between Saab, GE Aviation, and Rolls-Royce. On paper, Rolls-Royce appeared as a co-producer of the F414 engine, the power plant at the heart of the Gripen E. Public descriptions framed the role as routine manufacturing support and quality oversight. Behind closed doors, the mission was far broader. Rolls-Royce engineers were tasked with rethinking and refining critical subsystems to meet Sweden's operational realities. Those realities were shaped by frozen roadways, rapid dispersal, intense electronic warfare environments, and a constant expectation of readiness. What began as a standard cooperation contract gradually turned into one of the most discreet performance upgrades seen in modern military aviation. The wider NATO community remained largely unaware until classified assessments began circulating, prompting surprise inside defense ministries that had long written the aircraft off. Later briefings pointed to 4 major areas where Rolls-Royce delivered meaningful gains. None of them came with marketing fanfare, yet together they transformed how the Gripen performed and how it was viewed. The first centered on thermal signature management. Engineers reworked exhaust flow behavior and internal cooling pathways to stabilize heat output and reduce infrared visibility. The result was a fighter that became far harder to track using infrared search and track systems and heat-seeking surface-to-air missiles. Modern air defenses such as Russia's S-400 and Pantsir S-1, along with airborne IR-ST systems carried by aircraft like the Su-35, rely heavily on thermal cues. By smoothing and masking those cues, the Gripen gained a survivability advantage often described by analysts as intelligent stealth, achieved through engineering choices rather than exotic coatings or extreme airframe shaping. The second improvement focused on how power was delivered rather than how much could be advertised. Instead of chasing peak thrust numbers for brochures, Rolls-Royce reshaped the engine's power curve around real combat needs. Acceleration at low altitude improved, fuel efficiency at high altitude increased, and thrust delivery during aggressive maneuvers became more predictable and responsive. This altered how the aircraft behaved in close combat, missile evasion, and sustained high-G turns. Pilots reported an aircraft that felt smoother, quicker to answer inputs, and easier to manage under pressure. The engine no longer defined the limits of the airframe during dynamic engagements, and that alone dismantled long-standing assumptions about the Gripen's supposed shortcomings. The third area involved the digital nervous system of the engine. Rolls-Royce quietly updated the FADEC, the full-authority digital engine control that governs how power is produced and managed. Timing, throttle response, and coordination with onboard systems all improved. More importantly, the updates transformed how the engine interacted with the Gripen E's sensor fusion and electronic warfare architecture. The Arexis electronic warfare suite could now operate at full output without degrading propulsion performance or forcing trade-offs elsewhere. Earlier configurations imposed limits that required pilots and systems to balance between engine demand and electronic dominance. That ceiling vanished. Sensors, jammers, and defensive systems could be pushed to their limits while the engine remained stable and efficient. The fourth improvement addressed reliability in environments most fighters avoid. The Gripen was already designed for dispersed operations, but Rolls-Royce extended those margins. Tolerance for foreign object ingestion increased, resistance to rapid temperature swings improved, and maintenance demands were simplified for field crews. The engine emphasized one-crew serviceability and faster turnaround cycles. As a result, downtime dropped by as much as 40% compared to older configurations. For air forces that measure combat strength by how many aircraft are ready to fly rather than how impressive specifications look on paper, that shift carried enormous weight. NATO fighter wings reviewing the data were caught off guard. The Gripen was never expected to challenge the F-35 directly, yet in several mission profiles it began outperforming it quietly and consistently. That performance shift triggered consequences far beyond engineering circles. European air forces have long depended on American engines, avionics, and policy frameworks. Rolls-Royce's work demonstrated that a European fighter could deliver high-end capability with less reliance on the United States. That realization unsettled planners across NATO. The upgraded Gripen E began checking boxes that had once seemed exclusive to far more expensive platforms, including electronic warfare effectiveness approaching that of the F-35. Super Cruise-like performance in specific profiles, improved survivability against advanced air defenses, and a cost per flight hour that remained dramatically lower than any Western competitor. Procurement discussions started to change tone. Countries including Canada, Finland, the Czech Republic, the Philippines, and Hungary revisited earlier conclusions and quietly reassessed long-term requirements. This shift was never part of the original roadmap. The impact became impossible to ignore when Canadian defense analysts leaked evaluations focused on Arctic operations. The findings surprised even experienced observers. In cold weather missions, remote basing scenarios, and long-range patrols, the Gripen E equipped with Rolls-Royce optimizations exceeded expectations. Canada operates across one of the most demanding aviation environments on Earth, defined by extreme cold, massive distances, and limited infrastructure. Interceptor readiness and reliability matter more there than theoretical advantages measured in ideal conditions. The assessment suggested that the F-35 struggled in several of these categories while the Gripen operated comfortably. Reports indicated that Ottawa requested classified briefings focused specifically on the Rolls-Royce upgrades. Questions followed quickly. Officials in Washington sought explanations for how such changes occurred without direct American oversight. Concerns surfaced about export controls, co-development boundaries, and the future of fighter standardization within NATO. Defense lobbying intensified with warnings that a Canadian shift toward the Gripen could influence other allied nations. The aircraft became politically sensitive not because it threatened anyone, but because it offered an alternative. What Rolls-Royce ultimately altered went beyond hardware and software. The company reshaped the fighter ecosystem itself. A non-American aircraft gained the credibility to challenge decades of dominance in NATO fighter procurement. A European platform demonstrated advanced electronic warfare capability without dependence on American approval channels. A more affordable jet began matching systems tied to the most expensive defense program ever built. The internal balance within NATO shifted quietly. A new category emerged, defined by elite performance paired with realistic cost and operational freedom. The Gripen came to represent independence, survivability, and modular growth without political strings. That outcome caught the alliance off guard. The implications extend into a broader shift in military planning. Rising defense budgets no longer guarantee superiority. A compact, efficient, electronically capable fighter developed in Sweden and refined with British engineering began rewriting assumptions across Allied capitals. The Gripen evolved into one of the most strategically independent aircraft in the Western inventory, forcing NATO to confront uncomfortable questions about procurement control and long-term autonomy. The transformation did not arrive with fanfare, yet its influence continues to spread. That wraps up today's video. For more deep dives like this, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch you in the next one.